as a holistic healer, having studied naturopathy and herbalism and nutrition, I'm like, at the beach, you get vitamin D, you get exercise, you get to rest and relax. Your cortisol levels go down because you're near the ocean and you don't have a lot of stress. Same thing if you go into the forest, or if you go into different types of nature. It's very healing. A lot of us, we grew up with holistic health and healing. We just didn't appreciate the wisdom of what it was, because it was just nature, it was just natural. And our bodies are also holistic healers. We have these amazing machines. Our bodies are machines that were made to self-heal. Sleeping is so healing and free. The sun is so healing and free. And so holistic health and healing is really all around us.
Edition of Adeptus On-Air, and today we have a special guest. Mayim is a former computer scientist at NASA who also implemented herself in the world of holistic medicine and holistic healing. So a lot to get into, Mayim. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Holistic hearing also.
Oh, yes, there's a new area there. There we go. I appreciate that. Just tell us a bit about your upbringing.
Well, so I was always a STEM girl back. So I was born in 1978. I'm 46 years old right now, and back then it wasn't that common to have women in mathematics and engineering and things like that. But I was very, very inclined to all that. My father was an engineer, and my brother also, went into computers and engineering. And I just loved it. I loved logic and math and all these things. So I majored in that, and I got an internship at the NASA Ames Research Center in Moffett Field, California. And after the internship, I got hired on, which I heard was rare but possible. So it happened right at a great time, because before my internship, my my dad retired, and he wasn't able to. He kind of didn't willingly retire. He got old and he got laid off, and then he was not able to get a job anymore in his field as a professional. And so there was like one big loss of income for my family. And then it was just my mom working. And then right after I got hired at NASA, she also kind of got laid off, and she was also too old to get like a good job, because she was retirement age also. And so it was kind of perfect, because I was able to take over our home mortgage, and make sure that, our family had a place to live. So it's like, I really feel like me getting that job at NASA was kind of like a divine, appointment, because right when my family needed it, I was able to, help my parents keep their home. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It worked out that way, and I know, there's a lot of youth that grows up and say, hey, be astronauts. They want to be involved in space exploration and things like that. What would you say is the best thing about working at a place like NASA, and maybe the most challenging thing working at NASA?
hmm I think I loved about working at NASA is that it was research driven. So you could do a lot of experiments, and you could be curious, and it was okay. You didn't always have to just stick to your tasks, because it wasn't, completely profit driven. And so that was a lot of fun. And I was able to improve my skills a lot there, because, we really prized research and growing intellectually. And we had a lot of guest speakers that would come, maybe like, once a month, like really important scientists in their field that made, a lot of important contributions to their field. They would come and give lectures, and I would be able to listen to these brilliant people speak for free, and give their lectures. And I heard a lot of different interesting theories. There's this one that was very memorable. There's a man, he invented a mathematics program called Mathematica. And in his talk, he kind of got philosophical and spiritual, and he was talking about how he believed, like, so a lot, like, not everyone at NASA believes in evolution. There were Christians there that actually believed in creation science, and this particular man, he believed not in evolution, but he believed that the origin of the world was tied to a specific mathematical formula. And he was trying to figure out what that mathematical formula was that could set
Wow.
the world, like creation or whatever, nature in motion, so that we have it at its current state. And I thought that was, I mean, I'm not saying I believe
Yeah.
it or anything, but it's very interesting. I just love how there was a lot of free thought there, and different kinds of scientific theories. There wasn't a lot of dogma, like we all have to think this way and believe this way. Like there's a lot of room for thought in the field of science and also religion. One of my closest friends at NASA, she was this Chinese PhD, and then and she was a computer scientist and engineer, and she was telling me about uh, astrology. She's talking to me about astrology one day, and I'm like, wait a minute, you're a PhD, you're an engineer, and you're telling me about Chinese, like, astrology, the Chinese New Year and things like that. It's all revolved around the Chinese zodiac. I'm like, how? And she was a Christian too. I'm like, you're Chinese, you're Christian, you're an engineer, you're a scientist, you're a PhD. Why are you talking to me about like Chinese zodiac and astrology? And then she said, you know what? It's just statistics. She said, it's just statistics. I was like, huh, that's so interesting. That's true. I mean, there is like the crazy astrology, right? But then there's also this idea that statistically speaking, people that are born in a certain month tend to be this way, tend to have this kind of personality. Perhaps it's tied to the seasons. Perhaps it's tied to whatever's going on agriculturally or, whatever. But she's like, statistically speaking, people that are born in certain times of the year, they have these shared traits. I was like, okay, well, now that you explain it that way, that's logical. Also, very interesting. I loved working there. Just all the different kinds of people that were there, and sharpening minds with each other.
No, that's interesting, and all the interesting conversations that come from that, and the different ways. And it's always interesting how in that intersection, and then astrology, as you mentioned, is it's always an interesting intersection. So, yeah, that's conversations, and that kind of ties a little bit into my next. Speaking of open thought and non-conventional thinking, at what did you first learn about medicine?
Well, I think I grew up with it, even though I didn't know what it was. It was just natural. It was like how my mom approached being sick. When we were sick, she was like, rest, eat some soup, stay away from rich foods and sugar. And I even remember this one time when I was really sick, and then my friend invited. No, I wasn't really sick, but I was sick. I was feeling down, like a cold, maybe slight chills, not a big fever or anything. But and then my friend next door, they're always going to the beach and taking me camping and stuff like that, because my parents were older. They were like senior citizens because my mom had me when she was like 40 years old. So my parents were kind of like too old to do things with me. So I'd always go with my neighbors, and they invited me to the beach one day, and I was feeling sick, and I asked my father, I think he's the only one home at that time, like, can I go? And at first he said, no, you're sick. And he said, wait a minute, you know what? Being at the beach is actually very healthy for you. So he changed his mind. He's like, yes, you can go to the beach. And, I was like, whatever. Like, I didn't care. I was like, well, he can say whatever as long as I get to go. But now, as a holistic healer, having studied naturopathy and herbalism and nutrition, I'm like, yes, at the beach, you get vitamin D, you get exercise, you get to rest and relax. Your cortisol levels go down because you're near the ocean and you don't have a lot of stress. Same thing if you go into the forest, or if you go into different types of nature, it's very healing. Your stress levels go down, you get the sunshine and everything. So a lot of us, we grew up with holistic health and healing. We just we didn't appreciate the wisdom of what it was, because it was just nature. It was just natural. And our bodies are also holistic healers. We have these amazing machines. Our bodies are machines that were made to self-heal. Sleeping is so healing, and free. You know what I mean? The sun is so healing and free. And so holistic health and healing is really all around us. And when I started studying about it formally, I was like, it's part of life. It's not like I started being holistic. It's like life is meant to be holistic. And we actually have to do a lot of unnatural things to get away from what our natural state is, which is to be holistic and healthy and whole. You know?
No, that's a great point, and you touched on some of this in what you said now, but just for us like myself and probably a lot in the audience, what is the macro definition of holistic medicine per se versus say a traditional medicine that we all understand that over the counter and things like that, but what would the natural or I'm sorry the macro definition of holistic healing or holistic medicine be
Yeah.
in a
I really
novice
love
explanation?
Yes. Okay. That's a really good question. I like to use the word healing because the word medicine is protected legally, you know, and so it's reserved for people who are licensed doctors and things like that. And so I prefer to use the word healing because that is a word that we are free to use no matter what our title is. We're free to heal, and our bodies are self-healing. Holistic, it means whole, not just looking at one part. And so there's I have a book that it's only in draft version. I haven't published it uh physical copies on it yet, because I still want to enhance it, but it is available on my website. It talks about holistic healing and the 5 levels of the soul. So I'm Jewish, and in Judaism, we understand that there's 5 levels of the soul, and so in the Hebrew Bible, there's different words that are translated into English as the word soul. And so first we have our nefesh, and that pertains to our physical body. And to keep that healthy, we have to exercise. Eat right, things like that. And then we have our ruach, and that refers to our emotions, our emotional and our emotional health. So in order to keep that part of our our being happy and healthy, we have to be able to feel the whole range of emotions. We have to be able to be angry or sad sometimes, but always bring ourselves to joy and happiness. So keeping our emotional health balanced and well. So we've got the physical, we've got the emotional. Another level is the neshama, and that has to do with our intellectual selves. And to keep that healthy, we have to pretty much keep ourselves out of ignorance. And I think that this is really the root of sickness in every other area. A lot of the Bible says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. And we're losing touch with the way that we're supposed to eat and live our lives, the way we're supposed to think and feel, because of a lack of knowledge, really, I feel. And so the main thing that I do to help people heal is just educate them on what they're doing that's unnatural, what they could be doing instead, et cetera. It's all just purely educational. So there's the physical, there's the emotional, and then there's the mental. Another level of the soul that we talk about in Hebrew and in Judaism in the Bible is called Chaya. And the higher level of the soul has to do with our actions, making sure that we are employing our physical bodies and even our resources to doing things that are good and beneficial for ourselves, for others, and for humanity. And that's also another part of holistic health and wellness. on a, on a, like on a conscious level, but also on a global level. In order to be globally healthy as a people, as humanity, we have to be engaged in doing things that are good for ourselves, for each other, and for the earth. And then the last level of the soul, when it comes to, in my belief, holistic health and healing, it's called Yechida in Hebrew, and it represents our divine connection, our oneness with God, because we were made in God's image. And the realization of that, the realization and our connection to the divine, is also, I think, a very important part of being healthy and whole. And without this, oftentimes people can lose hope, can lose purpose, can stay in despair and things like that. So these 5 levels, you might be healthy in one thing. Let's say you're super smart, so you have a very strong neshama. You have a very healthy neshama. But if you are not doing some of the other things, if you are not emotionally well, or if you are not doing good and healthy things with your time and with your energy, there's also an imbalance of health and wellness. So we've got the physical, the emotional, the intellectual, our deeds and our actions, and also our divine connection, our yechida.
Mine, that's an excellent explanation there. And something you had mentioned prior was the healing of sleep, and that's something that intrigues me because sometimes I'll go to sleep sick and I'll wake up and I surprise myself of how much better that I feel. Or my kids will go to sleep and they're feeling something at night, and then they wake up, and feel much better. It's almost like a natural, like a natural cure. How does that work? Where your body is sleeping and it heals itself versus just being up in the day and you might be sick all day, but then you get a good 9-10 hours of sleep and all of a sudden, you feel much better. How does that work within the?
Well, when you're awake and you're doing things, your body is supporting whatever you want to do while you're awake, right? And it could be accomplishing a task, could be eating, digesting your food, things like that. But when you're sleeping, you're not giving your body any other tasks to do. Then it goes into recharge mode, just like when we charge up our cell phones when we plug it in, right? It triggers tissue repair and growth. It gives our immune systems a boost. It helps our brain to detox and heal. It activates our glymphatic system, which clears the toxins and waste products, like things that are linked to Alzheimer's, for example, from the brain. So good sleep is really important for long-term brain health. It also helps with pain reduction, emotional and psychological healing, especially through our dreams, through REM sleep. We can process our emotions. It reduces our stress levels, which, cause sickness and disease, and cortisol levels to rise. It can help us recover from trauma and anxiety because of this. Also, our sleep affects our metabolic and hormonal balance. It helps us to regulate our insulin sensitivity. So sometimes you may have a really good diet, but if you have really poor sleeping habits, you could develop, diabetes or diabetic-like symptoms. And it also regulates our hunger hormones. When we don't get enough sleep, sometimes we tend to overeat. And also it helps with our heart and vascular repair. It helps to lower blood pressure and our heart rate, so our cardiovascular system has time to recover. And also just longevity and cellular repair. It helps to preserve telomeres, and this short telomeres are linked to aging and disease. So it helps with just so many things. It's not just rest, it's actually active healing, and it's free. Whether you have insurance or not, you can, take advantage of of sleep. It's like a free gift from God, and I would argue that it's more powerful than so many pharmaceuticals out there. No side effects, you know, and it's easy. You know, a lot of people say I can't afford um, to buy organic all the time, or I don't have time to exercise, which is another big one. You know, you really should exercise, but sleep, it's like, it's free, it's available, it's easy to do.
Yeah,
Get at least 7 to 9 hours every day.
absolutely, absolutely. And with side effects, that's always a concern of mine. You know, if someone has a headache and they take some medicine, but it may give them nausea or a stomach ache, and it's like, well, they didn't have that problem before. Now they got two other problems they have to worry about. Why are there so many side effects in today's medicine, or potential
Well,
side effects?
I would say because of the substances that they're made out of are not the primary. When they make a pharmaceutical medication, they're not only trying to heal us, they're trying to make something that is proprietary and that can't be duplicated. So there's a huge profit factor when they're creating these things versus when we're just eating good food or anything like that. Even vitamins, like, they can be freely duplicated. There's not a lot of patents. There's no patents in herbs or supplements, most of them anyways, as far as I know. um, or even the food that we eat, they can't be patented. So I think the main problem of why there's so many side effects is they purposefully try to make something that cannot be easily duplicated. And so the main driver is not purely healing. There's this other factor, which is profit. And I think that's the main problem. So when you have this extra thing that you're trying to satisfy when you're creating a product, and therefore healing isn't your top priority, it's also making as much money as possible. Well, that just leads to corruption. It says that it's written that money is the root of. I know a lot of people say that money is the root of all evil. I don't think money is the root of all evil. I think there's a lot of other things that cause evil, but the love of money is the root of only evil. Like, if that's what you love in life, that's your greatest love, is money and profit, then it's going to lead you through some really dark and evil paths. Like I don't hate money, but it's not my primary thing. Like for my business, for example, my health and wellness business, my number one goal, I believe it should never be to make as much money as possible. My primary goal in my health and wellness business is to create a movement, to, let's say, become the greatest health and wellness educational institution um, in the world that teaches what we teach. But I don't think that, if I made money my primary goal, I think that that could just open the door to a lot of corruption and deception, because a lot of things that heal people, I would say the greatest things that heal people, um, cannot be patented. Like I just told you, sleep is one of the greatest healers. Another one is sunshine. It's a great healer.
Yeah,
And if I said it was something else that is a great healer, something that only I have access to, and you have to get it from me, you have to pay me a lot of money in order to do it, and everybody else that tries to make it is going to get into legal trouble and financial trouble if they try to provide it to you, well, then, that might make me a lot of money. And that's exactly what the pharmaceutical companies do when they say, oh, only this cures cancer, only this is approved for healing this or that disease. They do that because of money. It's a plain and simple. And I think that's why there are so many side effects, because of the intent and the driver behind their creation.
yeah. Wow. No, that's an interesting insight with that I never thought about. But you mentioned, like, cancer and things like that. There's some diseases out there that we've spent probably billions of dollars at this point trying to find a full cure for. Do you think there are answers there for places like cancer and some other, diseases that we're trying to find a cure for as a society? Do you think there are some answers in the holistic approach that haven't necessarily been explored yet for the mainstream?
Yeah, I mean, they haven't been explored by mainstream medicine here in America, but they certainly have in other places. There's an institution called Hope for Cancer in Mexico, and it's run by a lot of American doctors, but they've chosen to move their practice to South America because they're free to heal there. They're not controlled by the American Medical Association, all these other three-letter government institutions, CDC, whatever, etc. Then they don't have jurisdiction over there, and so they're free to heal people of cancer using a whole host of different types of holistic remedies. It's not just one. There's not like one cure for cancer. There's many cures for cancer. And sometimes you have to employ many things. It's like, if you want to heal from cancer, you definitely have to get good sleep. You definitely have to get adequate sunshine and exercise. And you definitely have to cut out all the toxins from your diet, from your environment, from your mindset, etc. And then there's also a lot of different herbs and foods that you can eat to also support your immune system. And I think something that we have to remember is that, again, our bodies are self-healing. Our bodies can heal themselves of every disease. Really, what we have to do is we have to give our bodies the right environment and the right nutrients. And there's no difference between us and a plant, in the sense that if you have an issue with the plant, what is the first thing that you're going to do? You're going to make sure that it gets proper sunlight. You're going to make sure it gets proper water. You're going to make sure that it gets proper nutrients in the soil, that you're not overwatering it, that you're not over sunshining it, whatever. I know that's not a word, but that's there are very basic things. And before you can do anything else, if you don't have those basic things and proper sunlight and water for your plant, it doesn't matter what else you do. You can give it all kinds of, pharmaceutical or organic, nutrients. It doesn't matter if you're not giving it the basics. That plant will die. And it's the same thing with human beings. It's slowly changing though, but holistic healers have always known, herbalists have always known that you've got to fix, the way you live and the way you eat. They're not, as far as I know, herbalists have all never been like, oh, here, take this herb, that's it. And this herb is like the magic, pill. It's never been like that. It's always a holistic approach. It has to do with, the way you live, the way you eat, the way you think. Are you getting enough sleep, etc. So yeah, there's many cures for many of these diseases. It's not that they want to find a cure, because there are already many cures. They just want to find a cure that is patentable and profitable. And until pharmaceutical industries that find a cure that is patentable and profitable, they do not even acknowledge any other cures. And they say there is no cure. That's because they don't have a cure that is patentable and profitable.
Wow, wow. And you would think, just for the greater good of society, that you could save lives, and if you kind of get over that, profit, issue, and just for the betterment of humanity, you want to save lives first. Maybe that should be the priority. Mayim, I wanted to talk about mother of seven, correct? From what I read, and how do you balance? I mean, I have two children myself, and I feel like my hands are full. So how do you balance family and work, with the amount of children that you have?
Yeah, well, I have seven of my own, and then I also take care of two more that were adopted. We didn't adopt them; we kind of inherited them from my husband's mom. Two of them are they're older. I have a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old, so they're living their own lives, taking care of themselves. But they still live with us, although that's going to change next year. They're both going to probably be moving out by next year, and they help with the children sometimes. For example, my husband and I were both in the Dominican Republic for about a month, and so they held the fort down for for that time. Um,
Awesome.
but in the beginning, I think one of the points is that in the beginning, I started with just one, and I trained him. I trained that one, and then 2 years later, and then I average like one child every 3 years. That seems to be my average. And so I just trained them to behave, number one, to be helpful around the house, like clean up after themselves, do chores, be nice to their siblings so that they can get along. Because, if my children aren't getting along, then I have to step in and I can't do my work, right?
Yeah.
And I homeschool them, and so I also have to teach them to be independent learners. And so when they're young, the biggest emphasis is learning how to read. And so when they learn how to read, they can learn almost anything. There's so many amazing books and videos and things that they can learn from. And I think one of the hardest ones is math, but there's like computer programs out there. We use this one called Teaching Textbooks, and my son used that all the way till I think pre-calculus, and then he went to college, and then I think he went all through. He finished calculus in college, so it was very sufficient. All my children are doing that, and it's just great. So I employ a lot of programs, videos, books, and then when I homeschool, we're all in one room. Like I'm on one desk, and then there's like three other like long tables, and I've got like two kids, per table, doing schoolwork. The older ones are, doing their own thing somewhere else, but all the little ones are like, around me, so that I'm not really teaching them because they have their curriculum. I'm more giving them feedback. Like we have discussions over, like, let's say I get them to read a chapter in a book or watch a documentary video or something like that, and then we'll discuss it. Or I'll review their paper that they wrote and things like that. So another big thing though is that I really teach like a chain of command, like authority, so that they each one respects their elders. And I think that's super important because um when I'm not there because I have to run to the store or something, let's say, right? Then they know that the 14-year-old, the oldest among the non-adult children, he is in charge, and they have to respect him like he were me, like as if he got his authority from me, and if they disobey him, that they're actually disobeying me, and that keeps a lot of order in my house. It's not perfect, it's kind of hard to respect someone who's only like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years older than you, but it is something that I always try to enforce and remind them of. And I think I got that from my Asian background. We have this thing where anyone older than you literally call them older brother, older sister. They could be like, one day older than you, but you still call them older brother, older sister. It's like a title. Like, how we say, like in America, we call certain relatives, we say auntie or uncle or grandma or grandpa, right?
Yep.
But in the Philippines, it's extended to siblings, and we have to call them older brother, older sister. The word is ate for girls, and kuya for boys, you're older, and it even extends to friends. So there's even a high, a, a hierarchy among friends, because we in the Philippines, even if you're friends, you still give that title to each other, older brother or older sister. Everyone's your brother, unless they're your boyfriend, then you wouldn't say that. But if they're not your boyfriend, then you and they're close to you, like a friend, then you might probably say ate or kuya, and you're not blood brother or sister, but you're acknowledging that this person is older than you. And so I think that this has really helped our family get along and helped keep order, and made it so that we could grow as a family, but it's not chaos here. And I always get lots of compliments from friends and strangers, and even my mom. She's like, I love your children. They're so well behaved, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it works.
Absolutely. No, that sounds impressive to pull that off. And And yeah, that's awesome tips for those in our audience who are parents. To, if you can manage 7, we can do 2 or 3 or however many children we have. That's a great
7 and an entrepreneur.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, that's right. And Mayim, what are some of your goals for the next, say, 2 to 4 years? What do you have coming down the pike that some things you plan on accomplishing?
That's a good. How many years would you say? 2
2 to
years?
4 year window.
2 to 4 year window.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm working on right now is I'm trying to create programs that are extremely affordable and accessible to help people heal from different issues, but that are also manageable and sustainable on our end, on delivering. Because that's the challenge, really, is how do you help people heal and not expect too much out of people, in terms of money, because the more expensive it is, the less it's affordable, which means that the less people are healed. But then at the same time, again, if my business is not making a profit, then I have to do something else, right, to feed my family and pay my bills, whatnot. But we're trying to create. This is our goal. This is our short-term goal. I don't know about 2 or 4 years. Hopefully, it'll only take 1 year. It's to start creating programs that are extremely affordable, so that we can help people heal, and get the word out there. And that's another thing. Like I can create a lot of materials and post them, but then how do I get the word out that this knowledge is here and that this thing works and this thing will help you? Usually the way to do that is, I do podcasts like this. This is why I do podcasts, so that I can reach different audiences. But another way that we do that is boosting the content through ads and just basically paid methods. But in order to do that, we have to also we have to charge something in order to generate the revenue to get the word out there. So there's this balance that we're working on.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, what are your social channels, and where can people in the audience find your work and find your products and your services?
So the website is arukah.com, ARUKAH.com, and we're also on YouTube, youtube.com/arukah, ARUKAH, and I'm really active on Facebook. I think I don't know. Whoops, I don't remember what my handle is, but let me see. It's Mayim Vega, Facebook.com/Mayim Vega. It's probably where I'm most active. And I think, we're also on LinkedIn and X and stuff like that. But I don't really engage with people that much, except for on Facebook and YouTube and email. If you get on my email list, if you download one of my things from my website, people email me often, and I send emails out too. So, yeah.
Excellent. Be sure to check that out. We'll also put that in the show notes. And just awesome insight overall, Mayim. And thank you so much for joining Adeptus On-Air.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Thanks for listening to Adeptus On-Air. If you like this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. The views and opinions by the podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Adeptus. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice.